Come, Holy Spirit, now as we spend this last evening together, guide us in our thoughts, inspire and inflame our will, that we may perceive and know and execute the divine will in every element of our life, and expose all our being to the light of God, without holding anything back. We, as priests, are doing what angels cannot do, and the Curé of Ars used to say that should a priest bump into an angel on the road, it would be for the angel to kneel. This then is our responsibility, to which we must never get used or hardened. We are reminded actually in the beautiful liturgy of the Church itself that when it comes to the crescendo, the moment after Sursum Corda, it's all towards God, and we have this going higher and higher in the praise of the Church, in which it becomes quite angelic. And if, in addition, we take care of the liturgy, we can suggest something of the majesty of God here on earth. And the people of God have a right to it. They have been shortchanged in some places. It is not fair, either on God or on man. If in the Church of God we have only man and more of the same, that is noise and unpleasant and unuplifting music, then who is responsible? Well, actually we are, in the last resort. No matter what panels and teams we have, the buck stops here. So we need to listen both to God and man when it comes to all that pertains to the rights of God, les droits de Dieu. In the Epistle to the Hebrews, we have that majestic language coming through, reminding us of what we are at. He, the one we serve, is the reflection of God's glory and bears the impress of God's own being, sustaining all things by his powerful command. And now that he has purged sins away, he has taken his seat at the right hand of the divine majesty on high. So he is now as far above the angels as the title which he has inherited is higher than their own name. The perfect likeness, the icon, and we must be icons ourselves. I'm saying that the icons in the East have been known to do things, and sometimes quite spectacular and amazing things. God meeting his people there where they're at. I know, for instance, the case of one icon of St. John the Baptist, which was attacked. And from being a beautiful, beaming icon, at the moment of being attacked, changed its expression to become an angry icon. And it's called the angry icon to this day, because the expression on the icon changed. The same has happened in a place I know in Rome and also in Verona, but the Lord coming through to our means of understanding. We use three-dimensional things, the cross in particular. There's a church near Rome where there is a crucifix and there is also a sword. Now, some enemy of the church had come in to damage, attack and desecrate the crucifix. But the sword suddenly bent back on itself and has stayed in that position to this day and is looked with amazement by pilgrims passing by, as it is a symbol of God's protecting himself, which we actually should be doing. Again, in Verona, in a convent that I'm still involved with slightly at a distance, like this one, has perpetual adoration. And they have two perpetual miracles there. One is what happened centuries ago when again, enemy of the church came in with, I think it was there, a gun. And he attacked the crucifix, and the crucifix defended itself. The legs bent up to avoid the bullet, and they're still bent up to this day. And another in the same convent is what the angels did one night. They were trying to reproduce Christ sleeping in death. And the nuns were working, this is generations ago, hard on this, and they'd come to the face and they couldn't get it right. Eventually just had to abandon projects and go to sleep. It was time. So they did. And what was their amazement when they found that the angels had finished it for them? It's a perfect face of Christ on the sleeping Christ in death. So heaven is about us all over the place in our Catholic life. And actually Protestants secretly know it and intuit it. They know that we are used to handling the divine in a way that they're not. But we take it too lightly. I'd like to mention this evening something in way of conclusion which will put us before the reality. Our priesthood is linked with the salvation of souls. We are placed on earth to be means of salvation and sometimes necessary means, because our word can change eternity. The Lord, whatever's going on, tries his best. First of all, a lady who is actually still alive, she was and is Catholic, but of her own making for years. It's Gloria Polo. She is a dental surgeon, and she was fulminated. A terrible storm, and she died. So did her nephew who was with her, and he remained dead. And she was then going to her judgment. And in this document which has come down, which is accessible on the internet, it's Gloria Polo's testimony. She goes through each thing that bit by bit she was given to understand. She thought that there was some mistake going on as she saw that she was going down. I'm a Catholic. And then the truth of the matter was coming through, that on every commandment she'd done her own thing. And it's very contemporary, and it makes us think perhaps there's more of that going on than meets the eye. Rather like Father Stephen Shire, she was mercifully given another chance and came back and is going around the world in Spanish, actually, giving her testimony. She's Hispanic. That's one death, although she came back, and she came back to be saved. Another is a very strange one, and is an interesting testimony to the power of grace at the most unexpected moment and situation. It happened during the communist persecution in Russia. There was a priest who was with his presbytera, his wife, doing secret evangelization through homemade tracts. And the secret police were noticing these going around and wanted to track down their origin. And because all the typewriters in these offices were in possession of the state, they were able to examine them all in the possible area. And they traced through one fault on the typewriter the one that was actually making these scripts. What it was the presbytera, the widow, because he was caught and tortured, I think, to death. The widow was caught and brought then for questioning. And they also were starting to torture her badly. At one point, they were torturing her and asking her, "Why will you not speak?" And she, under duress, just weakly answered, "He," meaning the Lord, "will not let me," because they wanted to know who was collaborating with her. Eventually, after one session of torture, she had to be carried back to her cell by one of the torturers. And she felt at that point some tiny spark of human mercy in him, and said to him something which went right through him, given what had just happened. "May God reward you for this your tenderness." Ouch. Eventually, the torturers were discussing amongst themselves how they would get information from her, and they were heading for the maximum, a torture which would usually be fairly efficacious. The only thing it demanded 4 strong men. When this one in question heard what they were about to do, he couldn't go along with it. But he couldn't do anything against the others, and so he did all he could. He got out his revolver, his gun, and shot at them. Immediately they shot back, and she was caught in the crossfire. And she was on the ground, and she said, weakly, bathed in blood, "I'm dying." And the other one, who also had been hit in the crossfire, the one in question, said, "Take me with you." And she extended her hand and said simply, "Come." And he took it, and they both died together, holding hands. Presumably the mercy of God had just got that man in time through very unexpected means. Another would be around about the same time, but slightly earlier, just after the war. It was in Mississippi. There was a Negro who couldn't read or write and wasn't baptized, who had killed his grandmother because, or rather the man who had married his grandmother in a second marriage, because this man was treating her badly. So he used a language that he knew and killed him. He was caught and put in prison, and he knew that he was on death row, as were all in that part of the prison. There was, however, a fellow prisoner in there who had a medal around him, and this man, Claude, was curious, "What's that you're wearing?" He just pulled it off, threw it off, and said, "Take it if you want," and he did, and he put it on. It was a miraculous medal. That night he was woken by the most beautiful lady you had ever seen, and she asked him, "Would you like me to be your mother?" Of course he would. And she told him to get hold of a Catholic priest and to ask for instruction. He got hold of the chaplain and asked for instruction. As it happens, a few others were interested as well, out of boredom perhaps, and they came in on this regular encounter with the chaplain. Father Hughes, I forgot, doesn't matter. He was a good man, and he gave them instruction point by point, but suddenly, when it came to the sacraments, this man, the Negro, would be saying things that he couldn't have known. And so the chaplain was taken aback. Where did he get that from? So he started to talk. And he added this: "If you don't believe me, I am to tell you something from her. It's that in the war you were in trouble, and you made a vow to Our Lady that if you got out of this, you would build a church in her honour, in honour of the Immaculate Conception. She's waiting for that to be fulfilled." Oh. From that point onwards, then, the priest knew that it was deadly serious, and he even would ask him, "Did that lady tell you anything about this?" And sometimes she had, and his knowledge was there already. Confession and so on, the real presence, he'd been informed. Now, he wanted to see that lady again. He received his first communion with great devotion, and they were going to put him to his execution in the electric chair. But because of his good behaviour, they were trying to get an appeal, a reprieve, and they went to a higher court. And as he was about to be put to the execution, the sheriff came in and said, "Reprieve, reprieve." And your man just burst into tears. So the sheriff thought he must be very happy. Actually, it was quite the contrary. He was very sad. So the chaplain got in on this and found that the source of his tears was that he just wanted to go back and see that lady again. And he explained, when you've seen her, you just can't wait to see her again. And so the chaplain had this idea, why don't you offer this terrible pain and frustration for this other convict, Jim, who was a lapsed Catholic, but had taken on a very bad life and was very bitter, wouldn't hear of prayer, chaplain, anything at all. He would just blaspheme. Okay, I'll do that. And he did. He accepted the fact that he wasn't, at least for the time being, going to see that beautiful lady. Then, sometime later, the appeal was quashed and it was not accepted, and he was in death row once again, this time for serious, and he was in the electric chair. And the testimonies of those who were present indicate that he died in a way that no one in the electric chair had ever died before. It was a ghastly death, at least it was in those days. He died beaming with joy. Sometime later, to the time of this other one, his name was Jim, to be put in that same electric chair. So, as they would do, still in the States in the 40s, they would try and get the chaplain to talk to him. He wouldn't hear of it, and so the chaplain had to just go into hiding. Present, because he had to be present by law, but not visible. They tried to get the doctor of the prison to talk to him, and he was spat upon with curses and blasphemy. That was his state, as he was in the electric chair. They couldn't get through to him. He was just hatred and bitterness, cursing all and sundry, God included. They were about to apply the current that would send him into the beyond and into eternity, irreversibly, with all that baggage. And suddenly, he screamed and cried out, "A priest! A priest! Get me a priest!" So the chaplain who was there in hiding came out of the woodwork, went next to him in the electric chair and heard his confession and came back to his place. The sheriff was shocked by all this and whispered in the chaplain's ear, what made him change? The chaplain just said, "I don't know, I didn't ask him." "Well, if you don't, I will. I won't sleep a wink all night if I don't know what happened." And so he went, the sheriff, right next to Jim in the electric chair, and whispered, "What made you change?" And he answered, right there at the back of the room is Claude. And behind him, with her hands on his shoulder, is the Blessed Virgin Mary. And Jim said to me, or rather Claude, "Jim, I obtained this grace for you through the Blessed Virgin Mary, by offering my suffering for you, that at this point you would see your place in hell." Jim went on, "I screamed because I've just seen my place in hell." But he didn't go to hell, because a priest had the power to change all eternity. My friends, we have that power, and we could be called one day to do the same. must be found.